What if the Canadiens' ridiculous injury situation was a blessing in disguise? The Canadiens woke up Friday sitting firmly in 28th place in the NHL's overall standings, 4 points out of 27th and 6 points up on 29th with 10 games to go, giving them an excellent chance of finishing the season with the 5th best odds in the May 8th NHL draft lottery. The Canadiens' 4-2 loss to the Boston Bruins on Thursday completed a murderer's row portion of their schedule, with them going 2-6-2 over a 10-game stretch against some of the best teams in the NHL. The Canadiens played 5 of the 6 top teams in the league, as of Friday afternoon, over that stretch. Not included in that group are the defending Stanley Cup champions, 2 games, and 1 win, against the team that won the Cup the 2 years prior, and 2 games against teams fighting for their lives to make the Eastern Conference playoffs. Getting 6 out of a possible 20 points in those games is nothing to celebrate unless you are invested in the Canadiens losing, which many of you are. Frankly, if you gave Canadiens management some truth serum, they would probably admit they are, too. But watching the way Kirby Dach performed in his first 2 games back from a lower body injury that kept him out a month, putting up 2 goals and an assist and generally being a dominant force that plays in the offensive end of the ice more often than not, got me thinking. What impact would a healthy Dach have had on that stretch of 10 games, where the Canadiens lost twice in a shootout, another game by 1 goal and another by 2 goals with an empty netter at the end? Might he have made the difference between a win and a loss? How about having a healthy Josh Anderson on Thursday night in Boston? Could he have turned that result around? The Canadiens' multitude of injuries have been a talking point all season. In the first game that Dach missed on February 16 in Carolina, he was one of 9 Canadiens regulars out, not including Paul Byron and Carey Price. It's an astounding number. The Canadiens' strong performance in a losing effort in Boston came in large part because Dach, Jake Evans, and Brendan Gallagher were back in the lineup, providing balance up front, but there were still 7 regulars out of the lineup. Whenever anyone suggests the Canadiens are tanking, that assumes some sort of intent in how the season is going, that this team was built to perform this way. Which is not true. A healthy Canadiens team is not a playoff team, but it is not this bad either. No, that's simply a positive byproduct of the Canadiens' horrible injury luck this season, which begs the question, what might have happened this season if the Canadiens had normal injury luck? If they simply had a few injuries at a time to deal with like most teams? The Canadiens began the season missing Jonathan Drouin, Joel Armia, Mike Matheson, and Joel Edmundson. Drouin returned in the 3rd game of the season, leaving 3 regulars on the injured list, a situation that lasted all of 2 games before Juraj Slafkovsky was injured for 3 games. When Sean Monahan went down on December 5, never to be seen again, the Canadiens had a 12-11-2 record, and that is when the injuries and the losses began to pile up. The Canadiens' underlying numbers back then suggested a fall was coming, but injuries to David Savard, Brendan Gallagher, Matheson, again, Gallagher, again, Armia, again, Edmundson, again, Slafkovsky, again, Cole Caufield, Kaden Guhle and others ensured that fall ultimately came, and it came hard. What might have happened had those injuries not happened? The Canadiens would have likely fallen regardless, just not quite as hard, and they likely would not be sitting with the 5th best odds in the draft lottery right now. Mike Matheson. Matheson was first injured in the preseason and missed the first 5 weeks of the regular season. He then played 9 games, missed another 4 to injury, returned for 1 game and was immediately gone for another month. Matheson's 11th game of the season came on January 17. When Matheson returned from the bye week on February 11, having played roughly the same amount of time as a typical training camp since January 17, Matheson took off. Since that date, prior to Friday's games, Matheson is 6th in scoring by defensemen with 17 points in 21 games. His 7 goals in that span lead the league. It's probably unfair to take the 21-game sample and extrapolate it to 82 games to come up with a 66-point pace, but it is fair to take that significant sample and say Matheson would have obliterated his previous career high of 31 points set last season with the Pittsburgh Penguins. As it stands, he only needs 7 points in his final 10 games to better that mark despite missing essentially the entire first half of the season. Let's be conservative and say Matheson could have hit 50 points this season if he stayed healthy. That would have put him somewhere in the top 15 in defenseman scoring. That would have made a massive difference, much to the detriment of the Canadiens' lottery odds. Cole Caufield. At the time Caufield was shut down for the season on January 20th to have shoulder surgery, he had scored 7 goals in his previous 10 games. He had 26 goals in 46 games, on pace for a 46-goal season, meaning these last 10 games would be dominated by talk of whether he could hit 50 this season. Since Caufield went down, the Canadiens lost 4 games by 1 goal and 3 others in overtime or a shootout. So, 7 games where a goal could have made a big difference. It's not hard to imagine a scenario where Caufield made a difference in 2 or 3 of those games. Kaden Guhle. When Guhle was injured on December 29 in Florida, he was second among rookie defensemen in scoring with 14 points and third in average ice time. With all of those 14 points coming at even strength, Guhle actually led all rookie defensemen in that category, followed by Jordan Harris and Arber Xhekaj. Had Guhle's improvement continued uninterrupted, his impact on games could have grown significantly. That would have come with added points in the standings. The Canadiens surely would have taken that trade-off, more standings points for a more developed Guhle, but Martin St. Louis has mentioned numerous times they feel they got a sufficient sample size with a healthy Guhle to know what they have moving forward. Juraj Slafkovsky. We've been hearing a lot of noise about Slafkovsky's rookie season, how the pick was a mistake, how starting him in the NHL was a mistake, and all of that might turn out to be true. It's just impossible to know right now. At the time of his knee injury on January 15, Slafkovsky had 15 straight games without so much as a point. He failed to register a shot on goal in 8 of those games. He was definitely trending downward. But do you know one thing Slafkovsky did while he was out injured? He returned to Slovakia to finish his high school diploma. Some perspective is required here, and hypothesizing that Slafkovsky would have shown some growth over the final 38 games of the season is not much of a stretch. Would he have been a difference maker like Doc has been in that time? Probably not. But many were quick to judge Doc at that age as well, and perhaps something might have clicked for Slafkovsky where he started contributing to winning hockey. Brendan Gallagher. Much like Slafkovsky, Gallagher's game was not trending in the right direction when he was first injured on November 29, but during a season where St. Louis is constantly noting the importance of building a culture, a foundation, someone like Gallagher would have helped immensely. Joel Edmundson as well. Would that have had a big impact on the standings? Hard to say. But it definitely would have helped take some of the load off Nick Suzuki, the only Canadian to play in every game so far this season, in his first season as captain. The other side of the coin here is that the sheer amount of injuries allowed players like Raphael Harvey-Pinard and Jesse Ylonen and Justin Barron to get valuable experience and a legitimate claim on a role with the big club next season. But when you looked at the overall standings Friday afternoon and saw the Canadiens 10 points behind the Buffalo Sabres, or 10 points away from the 11th best lottery odds and a likely pick outside the top 10 in the draft, the sheer amount of injuries to important players, including some not listed here, start to look like a blessing in disguise. You can make up 10 points over 4 months pretty easily, especially with all the one-goal games the Canadiens have played, and especially with the way the replacement group began responding to the way St. Louis wanted them to play. Giving a developing coach a relatively healthy lineup to work with might have led to vastly different results. So, while certain individual players probably would have come out ahead had they remained healthy, a top 5 pick would have likely been out of the question. And ultimately, that is what will move the Canadiens further along the path to building a sustainably competitive team. And while what the Canadiens have right now isn't exactly perfect, it's also not quite that bad, and it's worth remembering that as they play out their final 10 games.